and welcome. I'm Tiffany Wong, and here's what happened this week. Taiwan is investigating a former executive of chip giant TSMC accused of taking cutting-edge chip know-how to U.S. chipmaker Intel. Prosecutors raided his properties and are moving to lock down his assets. Luo Weiren, a U.S. citizen believed to currently be in the U.S., has not been charged with a crime, but the probe could touch on national security and trade secrets. Chris Gorin reports.
Taiwanese prosecutors have raided the homes of former TSMC executive Luo Weiren, escalating an investigation into whether he took trade secrets to U.S. chipmaker Intel. Prosecutors confirmed Thursday they raided Luo's homes in Taipei and Hsinchu. They seized computers, USB drives, and other electronic devices. A court also approved freezing Luo's financial assets in Taiwan, like stocks and real estate, assets likely worth millions of U.S. dollars. Aside from gathering evidence, the moves may be a form of leverage to compel Luo, who is a U.S. citizen and believed to be in the U.S., to return to Taiwan for the investigation. Neither Luo nor anyone else has been formally charged in the case. Taiwan's economy minister addressed the case Thursday, noting that while one person's impact might be limited, the government is watching closely.
我们还是会密切观察整个这个半导体的生态系的一些影响。那初步看起来，我们还是觉得一个人可能造成的损害可能还是有限，但是这个还是要密切观察。现在还没有办法马上可以做判断，这就要司法来看因为除了人身之外，还有一些财产的问题他在台湾应该还有一些财产的问题
TSMC says there is a high likelihood that their former executive could use or disclose trade secrets on its most advanced nodes, like 2nm, A16, and A14, the crown jewels of the chip industry. Intel, meanwhile, says the claims are without merit and that it bans staff from bringing in confidential information from past employers. All of this comes as the U.S. makes a big push to build up its own chip industry, with Intel itself now partly owned by the U.S. government. The question for Taiwan now is whether this case remains one focused on a single executive or becomes a larger test for how the country protects its most advanced technology. Scott Wong and Chris Gorin in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
For more on the case, Chris spoke to Olivia Shedd, Director of Strategic Technologies at the United States Study Center at the University of Sydney.
Olivia, the stakes in this case seem to be quite high. It involves TSMC and Intel, the biggest chip makers in Taiwan and the US, and involving the most advanced tech in the industry. So things are moving very quickly, but when you look at this case, what's your main takeaway?
My main takeaway is that this is such an interesting case that highlights how technology security is at the absolute forefront of people's minds right now. Now, we've spoken a lot about sort of the kind of export controls and other levers that you can use to control the access to the physical hardware and the infrastructure, but the most difficult thing to control is, in fact, people.
Now, this case comes at a very sensitive time in US-Taiwan relations. The two countries are negotiating a trade deal, which is reported to involve many aspects related to the semiconductor industry, especially as the U.S. attempts to bolster its domestic chip capacity. Do you think that cases like this could create some friction in that relationship?
It's probably going to be a source of friction, no doubt. We have to factor in that TSMC and Intel, they are partners, but they are also competitors. So TSMC is an absolute indisputed titan of producing advanced semiconductors at 5nm and below. Intel is trying to capture a part of that market, but they have been quite laggard in their progress in achieving that market share. There's a big question mark around how long Taiwan and TSMC's silicon shield will hold, right? And the power of that silicon shield is only as good as the exclusivity of the technology and the IP that TSMC holds as well. You've already seen just this year Taiwan use its national security laws to indict three other former TSMC employees for leaking trade secrets to a Japanese company, Tokyo Electron, I believe. And this is probably a sign of things to come.
And finally, Olivia, what do you think that this case and cases like it tell us about the state of global chip competition at this moment?
I think what's really interesting to me is how these commercial decisions and national security decisions are becoming increasingly fused. We've seen that trend over the past couple of years already, but now it's really getting down to brass tacks of not just controlling supply chains or specific foundries, but now also specific people and the actions of individual employees within an organization. I do wonder where this is going to head. Are we going to be doing a lot of investigations authorized under departments of commerce into specific entities, specific senior executives? What does that mean for an overall innovation ecosystem where traditionally some of these players and some of these people do move very freely between companies? Yes, it is often under the auspices of some sort of non-disclosure or non-compete clause, but this is now looking at it from a very specific national security, national interest lens. And I wonder about how many people are going to be wrapped up in this continuing trend.
That was Olivia Shen from the University of Sydney. This Sunday, Hondurans head to the polls to vote for their next president, and relations with China and Taiwan have emerged as key political issues for voters. Cadence Carranza has more on how this election could be a landmark moment for Taiwan's global partnerships.
In just a few days, Honduras will vote on its next president, and the result could have huge implications for Taiwan. Two of the three major presidential candidates have indicated support for restoring diplomatic relations with Taiwan, just around 2 years after Honduras cut ties with the island in favor of China. This would be a major reversal, and a rare one. The first time any country has switched recognition from China to Taiwan since 2007. It would bring Taiwan's dwindling list of diplomatic allies up to 13, a staggering blow for China, which has been trying to isolate the country, which it claims as its territory. One frontrunner, Salvador Nasralla, has explicitly pledged to restore ties, calling relations with Beijing a mistake.
Yo voy a reanudar relaciones con Taiwán.
I will re-establish relations with Taiwan. Taiwan is our ally. Taiwan is an ally of the US, and we depend on the US. Not only is Communist China against the US, they don't do business with us. Not only that, we've lost all our shrimp exports. Coffee exports are down half since we established relations with China and left Taiwan. That was a grave error.
Another major candidate, Nasrias Fuda, has said the country was, quote, 100 times better off with Taiwan, and has promised to move Honduras away from China. The only frontrunner who has not publicly indicated support for ties with Taiwan is Honduras' current defense minister and ruling party candidate, Rishi Moncada, who follows the ruling party's line and is likely to stick with China. Taiwan has become an issue in this presidential race, largely due to widespread disappointment with how switching to China has affected the Honduran economy. One not yet released report by Expediente Abierto shows that even though Honduras is buying a lot more from China, Beijing hasn't returned the favor. Honduran exports to China haven't grown, leaving a huge trade gap. The shrimp industry in particular has been hit hard. Taiwan was once the largest market for Honduran shrimp, buying around 40% of the country's shrimp exports. After Honduras switched ties to Beijing, its shrimp exports fell dramatically. Coffee exports are also down.
Y hay un sentimiento de que ellos nos venden mucho y nosotros les vendemos poco y tenemos mucha presión de parte de China para que esa situación continúe. Entonces hay un sentimiento de cometimos un error, comercialmente estamos perdiendo.
Analysts say there's also a feeling that restoring ties with Taiwan would help Honduras align more with the United States. China appears to know what's at stake. China's embassy in Honduras has spent weeks amplifying messages on how the country has benefited from relations with Beijing, highlighting things like support for its shrimp and coffee industries, educational opportunities, and disaster relief aid. It also posted this more direct message, urging Honduran politicians to strictly observe the One China principle, act prudently on the Taiwan issue, and not harm China's sovereignty in any way. But some say the moves could be too little, too late.
Pero hay un sentimiento que ya no se cree mucho en lo que promete China.
If Honduras switches relations back to Taiwan, analysts say it could influence other countries in the region, especially those who have recently switched ties to Beijing and those that face similar economic concerns.
So these would be some kind of a game changer because, of course, this would open the discussion or the debate in other countries like Panama, for example, or the Dominican Republic, which were also among the latest countries. And of course, as you mentioned, it could also add to the ongoing discussion in places like Guatemala or Paraguay.
But the race appears unpredictable, with polls showing it could be close. And even if one of the pro-Taiwan candidates is elected, it's too early to say for sure whether they will follow through on their campaign promises. With so much at stake, Taiwan's foreign ministry has said it's watching the race closely. And on the other side of the strait, China has made clear it's invested as well. Patrick Chen, Larry Isiano, and Cadence Quaranta for TaiwanPlus.
In October, the community of Dulan on Taiwan's east coast hosted thousands of visitors for its annual Amis Music Festival. But what was it like to perform there? Our Zoom In, Zoom Out interview show tagged along and spoke with Kumu Basaw, the 2025 Golden Melody Award winner for Best Indigenous Singer, to find out.
Because we all know that you got the Golden Melody Award for the Best Indigenous Singer this year. So since you got the award, has anything changed so far when you're making music?
我觉得在我还没有踏入音乐圈，我其实一直都在努力的争取很多表演跟舞台的机会，希望自己有一天被看见。那我觉得得了金曲奖对我来讲最大的改变是我更勇敢。 因为我更敢跨出去做我喜欢做的事情，因为被鼓励了，被肯定了，所以我就觉得对我来讲，音乐不会停止，我会继续创作更多好听的音乐给大家听。
How would you define music for maybe your where you're at right now in maybe one sentence or a phrase?
我觉得其实音乐就是生活，就是人生。 因为我们透过音乐在讲我们的故事，讲我们的人生，或是我们看到、我们感受到所有的一切，所以这是我对音乐的，解释。但对我来讲，音乐是我的生命，所以我从大概幼儿园我就一直唱歌到现在，所以能够站到这么大的舞台，我其实一直都是很感恩的，对。
Can you maybe show us a little bit of movement or the group or the melody that you're feeling right now? Show our audience.
我带来一首是我们南投一个国宝阿嬷教我的一首歌，叫《真正的女人》。真正的女人，来自南投部落的歌，对，谢谢。
For more behind-the-scenes interviews, you can watch this full episode of Zoom In, Zoom Out, available on the TaiwanPlus website and YouTube. Thank you for watching Here's What Happened. Before we go, we take you to London to see some of the city's landmarks made out of gingerbread. I'm Tiffany Wong. Take care and see you next time.
How does Taiwan stay on the forefront of innovation in a world of uncertain tariffs, wars, and shifting geopolitics? Get answers and more, from award-winning programs to exclusive Mandarin dramas. Download the TaiwanPlus app to any device today. No ads, no bias, just facts. TaiwanPlus.